Hello, I'm continuing my reviews on the Godzilla series with Godzilla, the 2014 American reboot of the Godzilla franchise, a franchise that started in 1954 with the original Japanese masterpiece from Ishiro Honda. Now, this is the 30th film in the Godzilla franchise, 29th if you don't count the 1998 Roland Emmerich film, although it would be kind of hypocritical to not count that one, but count this one, because they're both American adaptations. The big difference between the two movies for me is, unlike the Roland Emmerich film, this actually does feel like a proper Godzilla movie, and whether you like the movie or not, the titular character of this movie is very much Godzilla. Now, Godzilla 2014 was directed by Gareth Edwards, who prior to this directed a 2010 independent horror drama film called Monsters, and he would go on to direct Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which was one of the Star Wars spin-off movies. Now, the movie was written by Max Borenstein from a story by David Callaham. David Callaham also wrote movies like Horsemen, The Expendables, and he would go on to write the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984. But the script also had a few uncredited rewrites from people like David S. Goyer and even Frank Darabont. Frank Darabont wrote movies like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, the 1988 remake of The Blob, and he also wrote and directed films like The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist. From what I understand, a lot of the scenes dealing with Bryan Cranston's character were actually written by Frank Darabont, and I kind of wish Darabont had a little more to do with the movie, to be honest. Now, the film was produced by American company Legendary Pictures. Now, my opinions on Godzilla 2014 are very mixed. When this movie came out, this was easily my most anticipated film of that year, because I've been a Godzilla fan since I was practically in diapers, and also prior to this movie coming out, we were told that this was going to be a return to Godzilla's roots, and I was really excited for that. And I'll be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed with the movie when I first saw it. Now, I still liked the movie, but I was a little disappointed, and over the years, my opinions on this movie have really kind of declined the more that I thought about it. But after watching the movie again for this review, honestly, this is actually a really good movie, but it's not the movie that was sold to me by the trailers, and it's also not the film that was promised to me by some of the people involved with it. Because the trailers basically sold this as a horror film. They sold it as a film more in tone with the original 1954 film, or with something like 1984's The Return of Godzilla. And the movie really wasn't that. Honestly, plot-wise, this film has a lot more in common with some of the 70s Godzilla films than it does the original film. Honestly, Gareth Edwards' film Monsters felt like a better tribute to the original Godzilla than this movie, because Monsters was a very dark film, and like the original Godzilla, the film really wasn't so much about the monsters, rather it was about the human characters and how they react to the monsters, and it was also about how society has been forever changed by the appearances of these giant monsters in our world. Now, Gareth Edwards does try to emulate that a little bit for this movie, where the film does focus a lot more on the human characters. The issue is, with the exception of one character, and I think we all know which character I'm talking about, the other human characters really weren't that interesting. Now, all that being said, leaving out the fact that I do think the film was mismarketed, on its own, this is actually a really good movie, and I also think a lot of people's problems with this movie are largely over-exaggerated. Now, what the plot of Godzilla is, it follows an EOD officer for the US Navy named Ford Brody, who returns home from a tour of duty, only to be once again called away from his family when he finds out that his father has been arrested in Japan. Now, it turns out that both of Ford's parents were nuclear physicists, and when Ford was a child in the late 90s, they were living in Japan. And Ford's mother was killed in a nuclear meltdown, apparently caused by an earthquake, but ever since then, his father Joe has become kind of a conspiracy theorist, and he believes there's something that the government is covering up. But after bailing his father out of jail, he reluctantly goes with him to the city where this meltdown happened, which of course has now been abandoned. And there they cross paths with a secret organization called Monarch, and it turns out this meltdown all those years ago was in fact caused by a giant insect-like animal that feeds on radiation dubbed a Muto. And Monarch has been keeping this creature's existence a secret for all these years, and ever since this meltdown, it has built a chrysalis, and now after 15 years, this chrysalis finally hatches, and this creature threatens the world. Now, it turns out that Monarch was also keeping a female Muto under lockdown in the US, and this creature also escapes, and now the two Mutos are heading towards each other to mate. So, in the film, an ancient dinosaur-like creature called Godzilla rises up to destroy the Mutos before they could overpopulate the world. So, as humanity's fate hangs in the balance, Ford is trying to get back to his family. Now, the character of Joe Brody was played by Bryan Cranston, who most people might recognize as Walter White from Breaking Bad. And Joe Brody is easily the best character in this movie, and I would honestly rank as one of the best human characters in the entire Godzilla franchise, and I think that might be more so due to Cranston's performance rather than the writing itself. Because Bryan Cranston really was carrying a lot of this movie, and he was also elevating a lot of this material. And because of Bryan Cranston, the movie actually does start out as almost a drama, which is what I wanted the film to be because the original Godzilla was a drama film. And Cranston gives a genuinely heartbreaking performance, and you really do feel this guy's pain and anguish over the death of his wife. Now, this is a massive spoiler, but a half hour into the movie, the character of Joe Brody dies, and when he dies, the film goes from being kind of a drama to really just a generic action film. So basically, he was carrying a lot of the film's drama. And it's really Joe's son Ford, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's the main character of the movie. The issue is, he's nowhere near as interesting a character as his father. Now, I will say I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was really good in the scenes where he's acting opposite Bryan Cranston. Again, once Cranston died, a lot of the film's sense of human drama also kind of died with him. And from that point forward, Ford basically became the typical action movie hero, and there really wasn't much to his character other than him trying to get to his family. Now, Elizabeth Olsen plays Ford's wife, Elle, and she's good in the movie, but she's not really given much to do, which I can honestly say about most of the human characters in this movie. Juliette Binoche, if I'm saying her name right, plays Joe's wife and Ford's mother, who we see die in the beginning of the film, and she's very good in the movie despite not having a lot of screen time. Now, it's worth noting that the fact that the main family in this movie are called the Brodies is an obvious reference to Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Now, in the film, Ken Watanabe plays Dr. Ishiro Serizawa, who is obviously based on the character of Dr. Daisuke Serizawa from the original 1954 film. The issue is, there really aren't too many similarities between the two characters other than the name. Now, the character's first name in this movie is obviously a reference to Ishiro Honda, who directed the original film. Now, Watanabe is good in the film, but again, he's not really given a lot to do. And Sally Hawkins plays Serizawa's colleague, Dr. Graham, and Sally Hawkins is a great actress, and she would later blow me away in Guillermo del Toro's Shape of Water, but again, like a lot of the actors and actresses in this movie, she's not really given a lot to do, and there really isn't much to the character of Dr. Graham. Now, Akira Takarada, who played Ogata in the original film and would make subsequent appearances throughout the franchise as different characters, he had a cameo shot for this movie that unfortunately got cut from the final film, and Gareth Edwards later said that cutting the scene was one of his deepest regrets. Now, where the film lacks in the human drama, it does make up for with the monster action. The actual fight between Godzilla and the Mutos is one of my favorite kaiju battles in the entire franchise, and the special effects is amazing. Now, a lot of people have complained how in the film it cuts away from the monster battles a lot, but honestly, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. The whole thing that Gareth Edwards was trying to do was show the battle of these monsters from a more human perspective, like show it from the people's perspectives and show just how horrifying it would be to be stuck in the middle of this battle. And I remember when I saw this in the theaters back in 2014, I legitimately felt like a little kid again seeing these monsters fight. Now, a lot of people have whined and moaned and bitched about how apparently there's not enough Godzilla in the movie, and I'm kind of two minds of that. On one level, I kind of want to ask the people bitching about that how many Godzilla films they've actually seen, because I could name you a few Godzilla movies where Godzilla doesn't show up till like 40 minutes into the film. And people have complained that the movie focuses too much on the human drama rather than Godzilla, but then I'm kind of like, have you not seen the original Godzilla? I would say the big difference is, in the original film, you actually cared about the human story, whereas in this film, with the exception of Joe Brody, none of the other human characters are really all that interesting. Where I will agree with a lot of those people is the fact that Godzilla in the movie really isn't the main monster. Really, the main monsters in this film are the Mutos, and I do think the Mutos are great villains, but again, they really shouldn't have been the main focus of the film. Really, the main focus of the film, monster-wise, should have been Godzilla. Now, at the time this came out, I was kind of disappointed that Godzilla ended up being a hero in the film, because I kind of wanted to see Godzilla as a villain like he was in the original film. Now, I knew he was going to be fighting other monsters in the movie, but what I was expecting was for him to end up being like the lesser of two evils, but I still kind of wanted him to be a bad guy in the film. Instead, Godzilla in this movie is kind of a superhero in a way. Now, at the time I was disappointed, but looking at the movie now, I've come to accept this version of Godzilla. That's why I said I honestly feel like the film feels more like one of the 70s Godzilla films, just taking itself way more seriously than those ones. Godzilla's characterization in this movie also reminded me a lot of Gamera from the 90s Gamera series. But while I would have preferred Godzilla as a villain, Godzilla in this movie is still pretty freaking badass. Now, TJ Storm does the motion capture for Godzilla in this movie, but I remember that at a certain point I stupidly thought Andy Serkis played Godzilla in the film, and when I reviewed Rise of the Planet of the Apes several years ago, I stupidly said that Andy Serkis also played Godzilla, but obviously that was a dumbass mistake because it's not Andy Serkis, it's TJ Storm. But yeah, Godzilla 2014 is a good, but ultimately deeply flawed movie. It's a summer blockbuster that I will say is a little more thoughtful than your typical Hollywood blockbusters, but it doesn't really succeed at being anything more than that, with the exception of the film's first 30 minutes. So, it's a movie that's good for what it is, but it's not really the movie I wanted it to be, which I know in some ways is unfair, but despite its flaws, I recommend it. Now, before I end this video, I want to cut to a few short reviews on this movie done by some friends of mine. When it cuts back to me, I'm going to be talking a little bit about this film's legacy.
After that awful piece of shit Godzilla 1998, I was really nervous about Godzilla 2014, because I said to myself, oh no, are we really going to try this again? Do we not learn from our mistakes? But, to be honest, I really enjoyed Godzilla 2014. It was a lot like the first Godzilla in that it's about something. It actually has a message. It's kind of like, you know, basically the effects of, I don't know if you could say the effects of war, but I would definitely say the effects of environmental destruction. You know, because you get like a flood, it just, I don't know, it just feels like the aftermath of like a hurricane or storms, earthquakes. It does feel like that. And it probably is a metaphor for global warming, climate change, stuff like that, and hey, it works. I'm fine with that. It's nice and dark. It's really fun. The other thing I was nervous about was that, in the trailers, I was like, okay, is Godzilla evil? Because I wasn't sure what was going on, but I'm so glad to find out that he wasn't evil and that he was a hero again. Because I love Godzilla being a hero. So it made me very happy to see that he was a hero again. I'm very happy that he had villains, brand new villains. I would have preferred, obviously, villains from the old movies, but we do get that in the next film. So I'm cool with that. I don't mind that. And, it really worked out. It was a really fun movie. I would have preferred to have more Godzilla, though, because, to be honest, Godzilla's not in the movie that much. It's mostly about the humans, and I like the humans. They're great characters. But I want to see Godzilla. If I'm going to see a movie called Godzilla, I want to see freaking Godzilla. And I know that they do that in the other ones, too. They have movies where it's it's about the people, and then Godzilla's in it. Not that much, or he's not in it as much as the humans. That's fine, but it's just, we're in 2014. I want to see Godzilla. It had been a while since we've seen the real Godzilla, the actual Godzilla, not that piece of shit from the 1998 movie. And it would have been nice to see more Godzilla, but it's fine. It worked out fine, and it was a lot of fun. I love the fight scenes in this. I love the graphics. Beautifully shot film. This is beautiful. It's so nice. It's so beautiful. Very exciting. There's some fanfare in there, especially when Godzilla, shoots his atomic breath for the first time. That is awesome. I love it. And overall, it's a great film, Godzilla 2014. If you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out. It's a lot of fun because, trust me, it's going to get a lot better as it goes on, because Kong Skull Island, to me, was a step up, and King of the Monsters was another step up, and I'm looking forward to Godzilla versus King Kong coming out soon, and I just love where this is going. So, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
I saw Godzilla 2014 in the theater when it came out, when school let out. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty decent. I mean, it wasn't the best thing. I mean, obviously it doesn't top the original Godzilla film. I felt like Bryan Cranston's character was the best part of the film until he died halfway, especially at the time he was really, right hot with Breaking Bad at the time. The film goes from being like a melodramatic sci-fi film to a stereotypical action film. I think this was also the first time I saw Aaron Taylor Johnson in a different film other than Kick-Ass at the time. The scene when Aaron Taylor Johnson skydives was actually pretty cool, but a little scary at the same time, just making me think, could you just imagine what that's like when you're skydiving and then all of a sudden you see big giant monsters destroying towns and not knowing where to land safely. I also thought it was cool how they made Godzilla. First he starts out as bad, then he becomes the hero and the good guy, and I think that'll be pretty cool how they'll establish him as a hero throughout the rest of this new American series of Godzilla. I thought Elizabeth Olsen's character was alright. I mean, nothing really special. She is a good actress, just this was nothing crazy. She just plays a mother and a wife to Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. That's about it. I like it how we see how Bryan Cranston's character, how tragic he is from losing his wife, and how losing the love of his life was really sad and tragic. Last summer I saw the sequel King of the Monsters in the theater with my father. I enjoyed it a lot. I love the fight scenes when he fights almost all the monsters, and it was also pretty cool to see Millie Bobby Brown in something different than Stranger Things to break her typecast. I'm excited for King Kong vs. Godzilla when it does come out once this pandemic is over.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. So today I'm going to be doing a review on 2014's Godzilla. I'm going to be going into a lot of detail on this movie, so spoiler alert. Now, I'll start off by saying that I liked certain things about this movie, but ultimately I thought it could have been done a lot better. I liked how they made the movie a lot darker in tone and really gave it a sense of dread throughout. It's for this reason that I thought that it definitely captured the spirit of the original. Godzilla in this movie is a destructive force of nature and not to be taken lightly. You're definitely not going to see this Godzilla jumping up and down on his tail. Unfortunately, that also brings me to this movie's main problem, in that there's just not enough Godzilla in it. In fact, he's only in about 20 minutes of his own movie. You may try to make the argument that he wasn't in the original all that much either, and had a short amount of screen time in that, but the thing is, that movie was a lot shorter by comparison, so it felt like there was more of him in that film. There was definitely way too much tease going on in this movie. I thought that the build-up during the first hour was done well, but when they finally revealed Godzilla, that should have been the end of the teasing. Once they panned up to reveal this amazing creature, and he roars for the first time, there should have been no more teasing after that. Now, I'm not saying that the whole movie had to be constant monster brawling, but they definitely should have given us more Godzilla than they did. The characters in this movie were pretty boring and uninteresting, with the exception of Bryan Cranston as Joe Brody. He was a really interesting character, and you definitely feel for his plight in trying to find out what the government is hiding. Unfortunately, he's killed off about a half hour into the movie, which leaves us with characters who really aren't as interesting to watch. Aaron Taylor Johnson does an okay job in this movie, but his character just isn't as interesting to watch as Bryan Cranston's is. Killing off Joe Brody so soon was a huge mistake. In fact, Bryan Cranston has even admitted that killing off his character so soon was a narrative mistake. I had the pleasure of meeting Bryan Cranston at his Broadway show back in 2014, and I told him that I loved him in Godzilla, but that I hated how they killed him off, and he went, "Shh." I sent him an 8x10 photo of the poster for Godzilla, which he signed. Another actor who I thought did a good job in the movie was Ken Watanabe. He's not as good as Bryan Cranston, but he has a few good lines in the movie. My favorite of which is, "Let them fight." I also like how his character is the one to explain the origin of Godzilla and that nature has an order. I met him too, and got him to sign my 11x17 Godzilla poster, which I also added Elizabeth Olsen to. But back to the movie itself, I think that it does a great job showing the devastating effects that these monsters have on human civilization, and the creature effects are very well done. The Mutos are both worthy opponents to Godzilla, and I think that they definitely gave him a run for his money. The final fight between Godzilla and the Mutos is definitely quite a sight to behold, although I definitely would have preferred if that fight had taken place in broad daylight, where we could have seen it better. I liked how during the fight at the end the characters had weight to them. Every hit Godzilla took is harsh and brutal, and you feel that. I must say that even though I still feel that there wasn't enough Godzilla in the film, the fight between Godzilla and the Mutos at the end is very satisfying. All in all, this is a good film that could have been even better and had me disappointed in certain areas, but that I still think honored the spirit of Godzilla. I hope that you're all continuing to keep doing well and staying safe. Bye.
Now, this movie was a pretty big hit, and it prompted Toho, the company that makes all the Japanese Godzilla movies, to do their own Godzilla reboot titled Shin Godzilla in 2016. Now, Shin Godzilla, unlike this movie, actually does go back to the themes of the original 1954 film, where it's a very dark and very political movie. After Shin Godzilla, Toho did a trilogy of anime Godzilla films. Now, Godzilla 2014 was the first film of Legendary's MonsterVerse. In 2017, they produced a reboot of the King Kong franchise titled Kong Skull Island, which was actually in the same universe as this movie, but set in the 1970s, technically making that movie a prequel. And Godzilla is actually referenced a few times in Kong Skull Island, and Skull Island is easily the best film of the MonsterVerse, in my opinion. Now, me and Jeremy did a review on Kong Skull Island back in 2018 when we reviewed all the King Kong movies. Then the third film of the MonsterVerse was 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I fucking adored. I loved Godzilla King of the Monsters. I know everybody crapped on that movie, but I thought it was a really good movie, and it really did feel like a big-budgeted Hollywood version of a Toho Godzilla film. I also think a lot more thought went into that movie than people gave it credit for, because the film actually did have a lot of social commentary on things like climate change, and there were even some religious undertones in that film. Actually, a guy here on YouTube who I highly recommend, Up From the Depths, does probably some of the best kaiju reviews you'll see, but he did a really well done review on Godzilla King of the Monsters, talking about some of the themes of spirituality in that film. You could accuse him of maybe reaching a little deeper than was actually intended, but it shows that a movie like Godzilla King of the Monsters, again, was a little more thoughtful than people gave it credit for. But for more of my thoughts on Godzilla King of the Monsters, check out the review I did last year with my friend Cam on that movie. Now, there's going to be a remake of King Kong vs. Godzilla set within the MonsterVerse called Godzilla vs. Kong, hopefully coming out sometime next year. Obviously, with the coronavirus stuff, a lot of things are up in the air right now, but hopefully it will come out next year, and I do look forward to it whenever we get to see it. So, that was my review on 2014's Godzilla. Now, when I started this particular series of Godzilla reviews back in June, I said that I would only review up to Godzilla 2014, but after thinking about it some more, I decided to redo my review on Shin Godzilla. So, Shin Godzilla will be my next movie review, and that will conclude this series of Godzilla reviews that I've been doing since freaking June.